The first words my daughter, Jessica, uttered to me on her wedding day, a day I had single-handedly orchestrated and financed, were not "thank you, Mom," or "you look beautiful." No, what she whispered in my ear, her breath a ghost of champagne and expensive perfume, was, "The best wedding gift you could give us is to disappear from our family." Her voice, sweet as honey laced with arsenic, was a chilling counterpoint to the joyous symphony of the string quartet playing in the manicured gardens of the ridiculously opulent venue I'd bled my retirement savings dry for. I smiled, a serene, placid smile that didn't quite reach my 64-year-old eyes. "Of course, my love," I murmured, patting her perfectly sculpted arm. "Anything for my little girl." The Californian sun was beginning its slow descent, casting long, dramatic shadows across the sea of blush pink and cream roses. 200 guests, a veritable who's who of Silicon Valley's nouveau riche, mingled on the terrace, their laughter and chatter a dissonant hum against the turmoil raging within me. They saw a proud mother of the bride, resplendent in a custom-made lavender silk gown, a picture of grace and maternal devotion. They didn't see the fissures in the facade, the cracks in the carefully constructed mask I had worn for decades. They didn't know that the woman they were smiling at, the woman who had just been discarded like a piece of unwanted furniture, was about to bring the whole glittering charade crashing down. My revenge had been years in the making, a slow-burning fire fueled by 1,000 tiny cuts, a million moments of casual cruelty and unthinking selfishness. Jessica's words were merely the final gust of wind that would fan the embers into an inferno. As I watched her glide back to her new husband, Michael, his own smile as wide and insincere as hers, a sense of calm washed over me. This wasn't the impulsive act of a wounded mother. This was a symphony of destruction, and I, the conductor, was about to raise my baton. The transition from the cocktail hour to the grand reception was seamless. The guests found their seats at tables groaning under the weight of crystal and silverware. I had spared no expense. The finest champagne flowed like water, and a Michelin-starred chef had crafted a menu that was a work of art. I took my seat at the head table, the very picture of maternal pride, and listened to the clinking of glasses and the self-congratulatory speeches. Michael's father, a man whose real estate empire was built on a foundation of shady deals and ruthless acquisitions, droned on about family values and the sanctity of marriage. I almost laughed out loud. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for, the traditional slideshow of the happy couple. Jessica and Michael's love story, as told through a series of professionally curated photographs. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the room. The first few images were predictable enough: baby pictures, awkward teenage years, romantic vacation snaps. The guests cooed and awed on cue. And then, the screen flickered. Instead of a picture of Jessica and Michael in Paris, a different image appeared. It was a grainy, black-and-white photo of a young woman, her face a mask of desperation, handing a newborn baby to a well-dressed couple. The woman in the photo was Michael's mother, a woman who had built her entire social standing on her impeccable pedigree and old money lineage. And the baby, as the accompanying birth certificate briefly flashed on the screen, proved, was Michael. A hushed whisper rippled through the room. Michael's parents, their faces ashen, tried to signal the technicians to stop the slideshow, but it was too late. The carefully constructed narrative of their lives had been shattered in an instant. But I was just getting started. The next image was a bank statement. My bank statement. A series of large withdrawals, each one corresponding to a significant milestone in Jessica and Michael's life. The down payment on their first home, the seed money for their innovative tech startup, the exorbitant cost of this very wedding. The narrative I had allowed Jessica to spin for years, the story of the self-made power couple who had achieved everything on their own, was exposed for the lie it was. The final slide was a simple line of text, a wedding gift from a mother who has given everything. As requested, I will now disappear. Enjoy the life you have built. On my money. The room erupted. It was a cacophony of gasps, angry shouts, and the frantic murmuring of a scandal in the making. In the chaos, I slipped out a side door, my heart a steady, rhythmic drum in my chest. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The image of Jessica's face, a mask of pure, unadulterated fury and humiliation, was burned into my memory. My disappearance had begun. My life with Jessica had been a lesson in emotional erosion. I was a single mother, widowed when Jessica was just a toddler, and I had poured every ounce of my being, every penny I earned, into giving her the life I never had. I worked 3 jobs, scrimped and saved, and sacrificed my own dreams so that she could have the best of everything, the best schools, the best clothes, the best opportunities. I was her fiercest protector, her biggest cheerleader, her unwavering source of love and support. But as she grew older, my devotion began to curdle in her a sense of entitlement, a casual disregard for the sacrifices I had made. My love was not a gift to be cherished, but a resource to be exploited. The first major fracture in our relationship came when she went to college. I had hoped she would choose a state school, something we could afford without taking on crippling debt. But Jessica had her heart set on a prestigious private university, the kind of place where tuition fees alone could buy a small house. I took on a second mortgage on my modest home, cashed in my late husband's life insurance policy, and sold my mother's jewelry. I did it all without a second thought, because in my mind, Jessica's happiness was worth any price. She rewarded me with a newfound sense of shame. She was embarrassed by my second-hand car, my home in a working-class neighborhood, my unmanicured hands that spoke of a life of hard work. I was a relic from a past she was desperate to escape. Then came Michael. He was handsome, ambitious, and came from the kind of money that Jessica had always aspired to. He was also a man who looked at me with a thinly veiled contempt, a disdain that Jessica quickly adopted as her own. I became a necessary inconvenience, a mom to be trotted out at holidays, a financial lifeline to be tapped when their extravagant lifestyle outpaced their income. I saw the way he encouraged her to belittle me, to dismiss my opinions, to treat me as if I were a foolish, doddering old woman who knew nothing of their glittering world. The idea for my revenge began to take shape slowly, insidiously. It started as a dark fantasy, a way to cope with the 1,000 tiny betrayals I endured on a daily basis. But then, a few years ago, I stumbled upon a piece of information, a secret about Michael's family that was so shocking, so explosive, that it had the power to detonate their carefully constructed world. It was a secret I had held onto, a weapon I had kept hidden, hoping I would never have to use it. But Jessica's words, her casual dismissal of my very existence, had armed me with a cold, hard resolve. If I was to be erased, I would make sure they never forgot me. In the days leading up to the wedding, I put the final pieces of my plan into place. I hired a private investigator to dig deeper into the whispers I had heard about Michael's adoption, to find the irrefutable proof that would expose his mother's lie. I gathered all the financial records, the bank statements and loan agreements that documented the true extent of my financial support for Jessica and Michael. I enlisted the help of a disgruntled former employee of Michael's father, a man who had been ruthlessly cast aside and was more than happy to provide me with a list of the guests and their dirty little secrets. And I found a young, tech-savvy film student who was willing, for a handsome fee, to create the slideshow that would be my parting gift. As I drove away from the wedding venue, my phone began to ring. It was Jessica. I let it go to voicemail. A string of angry, incoherent text messages followed. I didn't read them. I was driving towards the airport, a one-way ticket to an undisclosed location in my purse. I had sold my house, emptied my bank accounts, and severed all ties to the life I had known. I was a ghost, a phantom, a mother who had finally, and spectacularly, disappeared. The days that followed were a blur of cheap motels and long, lonely highways. I drove without a destination, putting as much distance as I could between myself and the life I had left behind. I bought a prepaid phone, a new laptop, and created a new identity for myself online. I became a silent observer, a lurker in the shadows of the internet, watching the fallout from my act of revenge. The story of the wedding day disaster went viral. It was a cautionary tale for the digital age, a story of family secrets and public shaming. The media, both social and mainstream, had a field day. Photos of the shocked faces of the guests, the furious bride, the disgraced groom, were splashed across every gossip blog and tabloid. The story of Michael's secret adoption, his mother's decades-long deception, was picked apart and analyzed by a voracious public. The revelation of my financial contributions to Jessica and Michael's life became a symbol of ungrateful children and the sacrifices of a scorned mother. The consequences for Jessica and Michael were swift and brutal. Michael's parents, their social standing in tatters, became pariahs. Michael's career, which had been on a meteoric rise, stalled. His business partners, wary of the scandal, began to distance themselves. Jessica, once the queen bee of her social circle, found herself ostracized. Her friends, the same people who had toasted her at her wedding, now whispered about her behind her back. Their perfect life, the life they had built on a foundation of lies and my money, had crumbled to dust. I found a strange, detached satisfaction in their downfall. It wasn't a feeling of joy or even triumph. It was a quiet, cold sense of justice. I had held up a mirror to their lives, and the reflection had been ugly and distorted. They had been forced to confront the truth of who they were, and the truth had shattered them. But my revenge was not without its own price. In my quest to destroy their lives, I had also destroyed my own. I was adrift, a woman without a past, a future, or a home. The anger and resentment that had fueled me for so long had burned out, leaving behind an empty, hollow ache. The memories of the good times, the laughter and the love that had once existed between me and my daughter, began to creep back in, haunting me in the quiet moments of the night. Had I gone too far? Had I become the monster they had made me out to be? I found a small, quiet town in a state I had never been to before. I rented a small apartment and tried to build a new life for myself. I got a job at the local library, a place of quiet and solitude. I made a few tentative friendships with women my own age, women who knew nothing of my past, who saw me simply as a kind, quiet woman who loved books. For the first time in a long time, I began to feel a sense of peace. And then, one day, I received an email. It was from a sender I didn't recognize. The subject line was a single word: found. My blood ran cold. The email contained a single image, a recent photo of me, taken from a distance, as I was leaving the library. The message was brief: I know who you are. I know what you did. And I know what you don't know. The fear was a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I had been so careful. I had covered my tracks, erased my digital footprint, and built a new identity. Who could have found me? And what did they want? Was it Jessica seeking a different kind of revenge? Was it Michael or his powerful, vindictive family? The possibilities were a terrifying spiral of paranoia. A few days later, another email arrived. This one contained a single, grainy photo of a man I had never seen before. He was young, with dark, intense eyes and a grim, set jaw. The message was even more cryptic than the first: he's looking for you too. And he's not the only one. The peace I had found was shattered. I was no longer an anonymous ghost. I was a target. My carefully constructed new life was a house of cards, and the slightest breeze could bring it all down. The past I had tried to bury was not only catching up with me, it was closing in from all sides. I spent my days in a state of hypervigilance, my nights in a state of sleepless dread. Every shadow held a potential threat, every unfamiliar face a possible enemy. The quiet life I had created for myself had become a prison of my own making. I was a woman on the run, not from the law, but from the ghosts of my own past. One evening, as I was walking home from the library, a car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and a woman with kind, sad eyes looked out at me. "Eleanor?" she asked, her voice soft and hesitant. It was Michael's birth mother, the woman from the photo at the wedding. She had aged, her face etched with the lines of a hard life, but there was no mistaking her. I stood there, frozen, unable to speak. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to talk to you. It's about my son. It's about all of us." And in that moment, I knew that my disappearance was over. The story I had thought I had ended was only just beginning. And the final act was still to be written. The ending remained a mystery, not just to the world I had left behind, but to me as well. I got into the car, a strange sense of resignation and a flicker of something that might have been hope in my heart. The car pulled away from the curb and disappeared into the twilight, leaving behind the quiet little town and the fragile peace I had briefly known. The road ahead was uncertain, shrouded in the long shadows of the past, but for the first time in a long time, I was not alone. And whatever came next, I would face it. Not as a ghost, but as a woman who had finally and irrevocably come back to life.
So, another story of my grandmother has ended. And be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.